Jesus' existence in history is commonly accepted by scholars, and this evidence includes writings, people as witnesses, and some artifacts. Writings. Centuries ago, there were no devices to print or type. All that existed was writings. Roman and Jewish histories mention Jesus in their writings. Jewish histories. Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, born Yosef ben Mattatyahu, lived around AD 47 to 100. He was the first non-Christian to write about Jesus. He talked about Jesus in Jewish Antiquities, which contained the history of Judaism from AD 93. In his book, Jesus is mentioned twice. He was mentioned in a passage about Jesus' brother James. The second time he was mentioned was in a passage in the Antiquities 18-33, which reads, "There was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it is lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men that received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was Christ, and when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men amongst us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the third day, as the divine prophets had foretold these and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him. And the tribe of Christians, so named from him, are not extinct at this day." Flavius was a non-Christian who mentioned Jesus in his writings. Dr. Gathercole in The Guardian says, "It is also difficult to imagine why Christian writers would invent such a thoroughly Jewish savior figure in a time and place, under the aegis of the Roman Empire, where there was a strong suspicion of Judaism. There was no good reason to invent a person under such hateful circumstances, most especially that even Jewish people who don't think of Jesus as God, nor accept many of his teachings, ever tried to erase his existence throughout their history. This could have been their best bet, however. He still exists in Jewish history. Josephus was in a position where he was a Jew that was protected by the Romans. In his quest to express his Jewish heritage, he wrote letters to introduce Judaism to the Romans. Jewish Antiquities mention Jesus twice. The first is above, and the second is when James was identified as the brother of Jesus. Josephus described another below. "Being therefore this kind of person, I, a heartless Sadducee, Ananus, thinking that he had a favorable opportunity because Festus had died and Albinus was still on his way, called a meeting, literally Sanhedrin of judges, and brought into it the brother of Jesus, who was called Messiah, James by name, and some others. He accused that they had transgressed the law, and he handed them over to be stoned. James was only mentioned because his death had caused Ananus to lose his position as a high priest. The name James Jacob was a very common Jewish name, and so there was a need for the exact description. James, brother of Jesus. James could not be referred to as James, son of Joseph, because Joseph was also a very common name then. The name Jesus, Yeshua, Yehoshua, was also very common. Thus, there was a need to say who is called Messiah. There would be no need to reference someone like this if they weren't real. James, brother of Jesus, also indicates that James gains some credibility because of Jesus' existence. Josephus wouldn't have written it like this if Jesus wasn't a real person. The term "who is called Messiah" also indicates Josephus' non-commitment to Jesus. He means Jesus, who several people believe is the Messiah. Thus, Josephus wasn't trying to write to gain favor for someone he believed in. Even in rabbinic writings, Jesus' existence wasn't denied. Yet if there was anyone in the whole ancient world who had every reason to argue that Jesus didn't exist, it was them. Yet all Jewish sources treat Jesus as a real person. His birth, ministry, the claim of being God, and many miracles, which the Jews claimed to be done by evil means, were used to assign to his charges of apostasy, and so he was killed. Yet they don't deny his existence. Celsus also wrote about Christ. He was a Platonist philosopher, and he said Jesus was a magician who made gains. With these several ancient documentary sources, proof exists that a person walked on the earth called Jesus. The abundance of these ancient texts makes it such that it's a deep consensus among many scholars that someone named Jesus walked upon the earth. Roman writings. The Roman writings by historians Pliny and Tacitus also talked about Jesus. Their writings have been dated to be about 20 years after Josephus' book. Tacitus is formally called Caius or Publius. 55-56 c. 118 CE. He had a lot of occupations. He was an orator, a senator, an ethnographer, and a historian. Tacitus remains one of the best Roman historians. Many say he's the best. His work, which will be talked about, is written in original Tuscitan Latin, which makes it a good proof of authenticity. The book by Tacitus from Ad 115 is titled Annals, and it mentioned several things about Christians. He makes mention of the Roman prelate Pontius executing Jesus, and the importance of his work is not only that he's recognized as one of the best historians, but also that the events are placed within the time frame that agrees with the Christian Gospels. Tacitus wasn't a fan of Christians. He wasn't a Christian either. The Annals by Tacitus is a biography of Nero. During a fire outbreak in Rome around 64 CE, Nero was suspected of ordering the fire because he was believed to have wanted to establish a building project in that part of the town. Nero tried his best to push the blame on Christians. A portion of the excerpt is translated from Latin by Robert Van Voorst. Neither human effort, nor the emperor's generosity, nor the placating of the gods ended the scandalous belief that the fire had been ordered by Nero. Therefore, to put down the rumor, Nero substituted culprits and punished in the most unusual ways those hated for their shameful acts, whom the crowd called Christians. The founder of this name, Christ, Christus in Latin, had been executed in the reign of Tiberius by the procurator Pontius Pilate. Suppressed for a time, the deadly superstition erupted again, not only in Judea, the origin of this evil, but also in the city Rome, where all things horrible and shameful from everywhere come together and become popular. Tacitus's mention of Christus clearly affirms many of the recorded things about Jesus in the Bible. He mentions some accurate knowledge of Jesus that was consistent with Bible knowledge. 1. Christus was what Tacitus called Jesus, which means Christ, and was a name Jesus was called by many in the Bible. 2. Tacitus associated Christus with the new wave of religion, which is Christianity. 3. Christus was executed by the Roman governor of Judea. 4. The time of his death was during Pontius Pilate's reign in Judea during the reign of Tiberius. The dates given go along with the date many New Testament scholars have assigned to Jesus' death. Jesus' death is dated back to around C29 CE. Pilate governed Judea from 26 to 36 CE, while Tiberius was emperor 14 to 37 CE 6. It's believed that Tacitus supervised trials when he was a proconsul and questioned people who were accused of being Christians, and even punished those found guilty. Therefore, Tacitus took a great chance of knowing about information that he verified as accurate before he decided to write about it. Pliny the Younger was a friend of Tacitus and a Roman governor in Asia Minor. He wrote about some early practices of Christians of worshiping Jesus as God. Pliny wrote these letters to Emperor Trajan around AD 112, quoting the writing in Epistles 10 to 96. They, Christians, were the habit of meeting on a certain fixed day before it was light, when they sang in alternate verses a hymn to Christ, as to a God, and bound themselves by a solemn oath, not to any wicked deeds, but never to commit any fraud, theft, or adultery, never to falsify their word, nor deny a trust when they should be called upon to deliver it up, after which it was their custom to separate, and then reassemble to partake of food, but of an ordinary and innocent kind. Pliny indicates the existence of Christ, who was brought worship by Christians. People's Teestang and Ies. Dr. Gathercole implied that the earliest Christian writings about Jesus were from Paul's epistles, of which the earliest dates back to 25 years after Jesus' death. This period indicates that people who knew him personally had chances to write about him. And what is very pleasant is that these witnesses' accounts go well, and the other information about Jesus that's been confirmed through archaeology, Jesus healing several people. For example, the account of Jesus healing lepers is confirmed through archaeology, which says that those living in a particular area that was recorded where the miracles happened had health issues like leprosy. Artifacts. Some artifacts that have been used to prove the existence of Jesus are the Shroud of Turin, the true cross whose segments of wood have been found in Europe. This cross is believed to be the cross on which Jesus died. Others include thorns worn by Jesus and the veil used to wipe his sweat while on the cross.